alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947.
You know flat earthers, I guarantee it. But you don't know who they are because they're afraid of talking about it.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system.
Hello and welcome to the 63rd annual Subliminal Deception Podcast, your weekly dose of conspiracy theory bullshit. My name is Cody. I'm joined by my pal Phil. How are you doing?
Doing good, buddy. How about yourself?
Not doing too bad. That brisk Minnesota humidity has swept in this week. It's very uncomfortable. I've been sweating up a goddamn storm. How's Arizona been?
Just about couple degrees colder than the surface of the fucking sun lately, but it's June, so to be expected.
Right. Yeah. So I suppose we should take a moment and talk about the murder of George Floyd and obviously what has transpired since then. There have been protests happening all over the world where people are fighting for equal rights, which they deserve.
There have been a lot of disturbing images on the news and on the internet lately of basically the militarization of police and tactics that police forces around the country are using, basically just to disassemble the masses of people who are fighting for their own rights. We mentioned it on the show before, how in the past, tactics taken by the police really went overboard with protesters, and we are really seeing this nowadays. Definitely things need to change, really training, selection of candidates to become police officers, just the whole gamut. And just wanted to say that really quick.
Yeah, and maybe I think we're really realizing it wasn't probably the best idea to elect a reality TV show host as the fucking president. Dude, that dude is we don't usually like to get political on the show, but my God, that guy is showing his true colors.
Yeah, it is good to see a lot of backlash coming from state and local officials, governors, mayors, chiefs of police, trying to combat what he's putting forward through his tweets and through his words.
Well, the thing I was gonna post it, like I like to troll the insane people who post ludicrous shit, right? Well, they had the picture of him holding that fucking holy Bible, right? Which was one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Like, he literally tear gassed people so he could take a photo op of him holding the fucking Bible, right? And
yeah.
So there's the big thing about when Obama was president, he like illuminated the White House with the rainbow. Do you remember that?
Yeah, for Pride Month.
Yes. So somebody, an insane person, posted the picture of the rainbowed White House with Barry Soetoro. Okay, he's our meme on the show. But then apparently Michelle Obama is not actually Michelle Obama. Have you heard this before?
No, I haven't.
Apparently it's like Michael something another. It was insane. I don't know. But my other favorite post was someone claiming that Trump is actually saving us from all the, how did they put it? Luciferians and Satanists in the world.
Yeah, that sounds like a Reddit warrior. looking to troll the masses.
No, I think that is a extremely religious person trying to, I feel like they don't understand that, like, modern day Satanists, I generally don't believe in anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, they're brought up from an early age with all these crazy ideas, and then these crazy ideas just kind of flow out of them.
Right. Yeah, basically what we're saying is there's no conspiracy surrounding the events that have transpired in America and around the world that clearly there has to be change made, and Phil and I definitely support there being change made with the police and with how we treat people.
So another kind of disturbing thing that really I've noticed, it seems to be really easy right now for governors and mayors to just enact curfews just on a whim. Much easier than it would have been, say, a year ago. A year ago, if you found out that you were under a curfew for an entire week, an 8 o'clock curfew, you would be outraged. And now we're all just supposed to accept it. Like it's the new normal. And that any type of martial law or military order that gets put upon us can just happen. And that really seems to have changed with the pandemic. But
all I can say is 2020 is just the... I don't... Do you think this will go down as like the... I don't... What would you even call 2020? It's like the wildest year that ever was. Or like the most... do you think it'll be the most life-altering change in our lifetime, I guess, or our generation?
Yeah, I do definitely think that this is a, like, in the like, I'm not sure if it's, so being a student of history, there are certain events that really are bookends to chapters of, like, world U.S. history. So, I mean, some of them are, the bookend of like the 1860 era, there's Civil War and Reconstruction. That's kind of like the bookend moment right there. There's World War II with Pearl Harbor. Some people say it's 9/11 that really changed everything. I really think that this year, really there is a way we act before this and a way we act after. I really think 2020 might be like just the beginning and end to chapters in history.
I mean, if everything goes as it should, I think all of those changes will be absolutely for the positive, though, right?
I'm worried that, I mean, obviously you hope for the best, but I mean, a lot of times in history, things do slide the other direction. There are characters in history that really take advantage of moments like these to, bend the way that we live and, what they can achieve, what they can accomplish to their will. Things that the super rich, things that the politicians couldn't have done a decade ago, they will be able to do now. And there's going to be no one to stop them because if you try to stop them, you're going to be, like, look at the news media with anyone who tried to live their life, in a way that they wanted in the past few months. You were branded as a terrible person for wanting to go out for a walk or a jog by yourself. Yeah,
that's true. Don't you think that was kind of like self-policing of people, though?
Yeah, I mean, it came off at the beginning, it was supposed to be policing yourself. And then they tried to make society, like they tried to make people police others. And they tried to have everyone rat on each other. I think it was the mayor of New York City was trying to get people to call in on anyone who wasn't complying with the stay-at-home orders.
Yeah. But I've heard he's kind of a piece of shit.
I
can't remember what his name is.
De Blasio.
Yeah. Well, I don't... Ben Kissel always talks about what a piece of shit he is.
Yeah. That's last pot on the left. They're pretty great.
You know what is weird? Speaking back to the curfew thing and the National Guard coming in and all of that, I was just reading it today. The governor of Minnesota is sending the National Guard to the North Dakota border. No idea why. I don't know.
With Canada?
No, like Minnesota's border with North Dakota. He's sending them all there. I don't know why.
He needs to turn them around and send them to the Wisconsin border. I would have them posted there all year.
I mean, that makes more sense, but yeah, I don't know. There's like hardly anybody who lives in North Dakota. I don't know why he's doing that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I'm trying to think off the top of my head like a good reason, but I really can't think of one. But I mean, keeping those Packers out, that's got to be objective number one.
I mean, that'll be a lost cause because, unfortunately, for the citizens of Minnesota, a lot of people have, in fact, became Packers fans simply for the fact that they've had 2 franchise quarterbacks this entire time. So
they happen to have been good.
Yeah, been
for the past
gifted.
20 years.
Yeah. But what are you going to do? But anyway, Phil, why don't we talk about... Let's get into this week's conspiracy, because it actually kind of... We're going to talk about a country that kind of does exactly what you are afraid that the U.S. is going to do, and that is Russia, okay? Everybody's favorite country, right?
Yeah.
So what this conspiracy is Russians lost cosmonauts. Have you ever heard of this at all?
I have heard that there were some accidents, and not wanting the accidents to get out on the world stage, there was some cleanup done.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. By the end of this conspiracy, I'll be very interested to hear your thoughts on it. I'm kind of leaning towards they might not have actually covered it up, but we'll get through all the details here and then let everybody make their own decision. Now, in the post-World War II world, the United States and Russia were engaged in the Cold War. Now, the Cold War basically includes the arm race between both countries, the threat of nuclear war, all sorts of weird espionage transpiring between the U.S. and Russia. The U.S. was very, very afraid of communism, as we know, which essentially is the cause of the Korean War. And one of the main things that was included in the Cold War was, of course, the space race, right?
Yes.
So, I think technically Vietnam was kind of... would you include Vietnam in the Cold War?
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah, so it's always weird when... I feel like when people talk about Vietnam, they don't really talk about the fact that it was essentially a war a proxy war between U.S. and Russia, which is what the Korean War is, and from the sounds of it, that's basically what Syria had turned into, right?
Yeah, so a little bit of history on the Korean War. United States had actually beaten the North Korean army all the way back to the border with China, and that was before there was hundreds of thousands of Chinese regular troops who flooded across the border and pushed the United States and NATO forces all the way back. Basically slingshotted us way back into South Korean territory.
Okay.
So there was also a lot of other these proxy wars. They happened all over. You mentioned Vietnam. There was also proxy wars that happened in Latin America, Africa. Afghanistan was a big one.
I feel like once I learned that, all of that was like, I don't know. It just was insane that the two superpowers are fighting within other countries. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. There's actually a proxy war going on right now between the United States and Iran.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, it's okay. So United States is using Saudi Arabia and Iran is using Oman. The fighting's all happening in, I think it's Yemen or Oman. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it might be Yemen. But there's a big war going on right now in those countries. And of course, Iran's backed by Russia.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems so more, I don't know. To me, it seems so much more despicable to use other countries to fight your, fight your wars or what. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's horrible. But if there was say during the Soviet Union, there was direct contact between the United States and Soviet forces, like not just, we happened to shoot down one of the bombers from Russians, or we just happened to kill a spec ops Russian dude. If there was actual pitched warfare between the United States and Soviet Union, it would have resulted in nuclear warfare. Yeah. There's no way it wouldn't have.
Yeah, then the whole world would turn into Fallout 4, right?
Yeah, basically, we would all be running around right now looking like fucking zombies, collecting bottle caps.
Oh, I'd be a ghoul for sure. I guarantee that. But anyway, now, the reason for the space race is because both countries believe this was the next advancement in military warfare, essentially. They thought nukes would be delivered from space, and I don't know. Do you think they believe that they would shoot giant death lasers down?
Yeah, so there was definitely worry that there would be Soviet satellites that were packed full of nukes, and they could just shoot them down at the United. They wouldn't even have to shoot them like rockets. They could just drop these bombs into the atmosphere and explode them over a city. There was also worry about, like you mentioned, like death rays, like focusing the sun's energy to go down on a certain city and boiling the city. There was also, I don't know if you've seen the movie G.I. Joe, the great documentary where they used a rod from God. Basically, all you do is you drop like a telephone pole size cylinder of, I think it's tungsten, onto a city, and it comes down so quick that it might as well be a nuclear bomb going off. It just causes a crust shattering earthquake that blows up these cities.
The only thing I remember from the documentary G.I. Joe was the ninja guy.
Oh, the ninja dude wearing white versus the ninja dude wearing black.
Yeah. All
Those
right.
were some great fight scenes, but yeah, let's continue. Not go into that.
Anyway, so what I want to do real quick is kind of go through the sequence of events that transpired in the space race, so then I can go back and point out where the alleged missing flights are located, essentially. So that's what I'm going to do right now here. So we start off on October 4th, 1957, a Soviet R-7 intercontinental ballistic missile launched named Sputnik, which is apparently the Russian word for traveler, was the world's first artificial satellite and the first man-made object to be placed in Earth's orbit. So I imagine the general public at this time, when they saw this shit happen, they were probably shitting their pants, right?
Oh, fucking most definitely. So my mom was actually, she's told us stories. She was very young at the time, but like they were very worried. There was thoughts that this could be like a listening device. They thought there could be nukes put on it. I don't think people realized that this thing was very small, like the size of, I think, a beach ball. It wasn't very big at all.
It was that tiny.
It was very tiny. It was basically just something to get up there, so they like could figure out if they could do it, if they could actually put it into orbit.
Well, like you said, when the U.S. saw this, essentially they're like, we have to respond because, like you said, the sentiment was essentially they could be launching nukes up there, and this is giving them much more advanced technology than we have. The U.S. has to respond. So essentially, this is kind of where the start of the space race began, okay? Now, 1 year later, in 1958, the U.S. launched its own satellite, Explorer-1, designed by the U.S. Army under the discretion of rocket scientists. Do you know the guy's name?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know, but why don't you? Nice little Operation Paperclip reference here.
Oh, yeah. Werner von Braun, or I don't know if it's technically Werner von Braun. I can't speak German that well, but yes, obviously, very, very famous Nazi scientist. And if you want to learn a lot more about him, check out our podcasting friends at Creep It Real. They did an excellent job covering Operation Paperclip, which is essentially taking the Nazi scientists, and that is exactly what this man is.
Yeah, definitely. I learned a lot from that episode. It was a really good one.
Very good. Definitely check that out. Anyway, that same year, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a public order creating the National Aeronautics and Space Exploration, aka NASA, never a straight answer, a federal agency dedicated to space exploration. Now, this next part I didn't know, which I think for me is really interesting. Now, initially, NASA was for national security, which was ran by the Air Force, the CIA, and a new organization called the National Reconnaissance Office, which apparently had remained completely confidential all the way up until the early 1990s. And at the time, the code name was Corona. So basically, it would be using orbiting satellites to gather intelligence on the Soviet Union and all of their allies. So NASA had an interesting past.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's really interesting. I mean, not only if you're like not just like somebody who's really a fan of like the space race and outer space. I mean, a lot of the nuts and bolts that went into that whole time frame are really interesting. Like a lot of like you were mentioning Operation Paperclip, a lot of the reason why we were behind on ballistic missile testing was because the United States put so much focus on dropping bombs out of airplanes. I mean, really, that was our bread and butter because it had worked so well, and we had just put so much money into B-52s, which we mentioned 2 weeks ago.
I know. Is it weird that your episode last week was essentially about nuclear bombs, and this is essentially a creation of the fear of nuclear bombs?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's interesting.
They all slide together.
Now, anyway, on September 12th, 1959, Russia launched the Luna 2, which was the very first probe to ever hit the moon. So apparently they just shot it up there, fucking smashed in there, and like, okay, we can get to the moon now.
Okay, it's not made of cheese. We figured that one out.
Okay, there's no vodka up there. I guess I don't know. Do we need to go up there, comrade?
There's no vodka, and it's too cold. Let's fuck it.
When it's too cold for Russians, you know it's cold, right?
Yeah.
Now, the next event, this man I'm about to talk about has become my new hero. I haven't read that much into his life, so hopefully he's not actually secretly a piece of shit, but I love you. On April 12th, 1961, 2 years later, Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first ever human to launch into space via the capsule-like spacecraft named Vostok 1, which would then orbit Earth. So, it didn't really say specifically, but I believe he's the first person into space, and he's the first person to ever orbit Earth. That's my understanding, right?
Yes.
Okay,
and
because
he's the first living thing to ever come back, I think.
And to come back, right. Well,
alive.
That's the belief. The first human to come back.
I think that was also a conspiracy that any animal that was sent up was left up there.
Oh, 100% they were left up there.
They would use dogs that look similar. So they would basically show the dog being shot up into outer space, and then they would claim that they went and retrieved the dog, but really it was the dog's brother that was shown to everyone. Or a monkey.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm about to talk to what America did to monkeys in a second here.
Yeah.
No, actually, on March of 1961, the Americans were working on Project Mercury, which would prove to be much lighter and faster than Vostok 1, but the reason they hadn't shot humans up there is because they were shooting chimpanzees up there. But because they didn't just launch a human up there is why they fell behind the Russians once again. So basically in, 2 or 3 events, the Americans have really fell behind.
Oh, yeah. We were getting our butts kicked pretty bad by the Russians.
In the beginning.
Because we didn't even realize that there was a space race. And also, any advances that we were making, the Russians were stealing. So they were making their own advancements. Any advancements we made, they would steal. It's kind of a fuck up.
So wait, are you saying the Russians had better spies than the Americans did?
I'm not sure if they were better, but they were very successful. The nuclear bomb was actually stolen.
Hey, can you just give the Russians a little credit, Phil, for being launched into space here?
Give them a little credit for stealing better Nazis.
Hey, look. Okay, yeah, maybe that. Stealing better Nazi scientists, maybe we'll give them that. Anyway, finally, on May 5th of 1961, U.S. astronaut Alan Shepard became the first American in space, although for some reason he just went up there and came back down. He didn't actually orbit Earth. So, again, somehow our boy Yuri had managed to not only get up there, but also orbit Earth, which is very interesting. I'm kind of wondering, like, how do you get up there? Like, how high do you have to get up there before you're considered in space or not in space?
Well, how do I explain this? So there's a certain barrier of atmosphere that you really have to cross to get into like orbit. See how it works is the rocket takes you up and then you're on like a curve and you have to get far enough to make that curve go around the Earth without coming back down into Earth. There's this video game I used to play where you'd basically like you have to make your flight eclipse go around the Earth. You're not really orbiting, you're actually falling. And that's why it looks like you're floating when you're like orbiting the Earth, is because you're not floating in the air, you're actually falling. But because you're orbiting around the Earth, you're falling basically just around. You and the spaceship are falling around the Earth.
Oh, okay. I mean, that makes sense, though.
Yeah, I am not, like, when it comes to science, I know very little, and I realize how much little I know. But I do know that you have to take yourself up there beyond the atmosphere, correct the course so that you go more out in a straight line than just straight up to get yourself to orbit around the Earth.
Okay. I think I see what you're saying. So Alan Shepard, it's kind of weird that America shot him up there but didn't try to orbit Earth. Don't you think? They really just kind of like took him up there but didn't like try to. They just wanted a person in space without actually like orbiting or anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, in one really good way, you really want to do those kind of things in stages, like take baby steps. You don't want to just go for it all and end up losing the first American in outer space because you screwed up some little math equation and it turns out you shot him out of the Earth's atmosphere instead of, like getting the math right, doing everything correctly. So taking baby steps is the smart move. Also, you really just want to get a man into outer space because you're so far behind the Russians at this point.
Right. So apparently, after this event, Long Dick, U.S. President John F. Kennedy, he got on TV, I'm assuming, or radio, and he claimed, God damn it, Americans will be the first people to set foot on moon's surface. So finally, on February 20th of 1962, about a year later, John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth aboard Mercury Atlas 6. Finally, on December 21st, 1968, NASA launched Apollo 8, which would be the first manned space mission to orbit the moon. Not quite touching it yet. But, I mean, goddamn, it took 6 years to get just that close to the moon. On July 16th, 1969, NASA launched Apollo 11, which contained Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. And on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the very first person to walk on the surface of the moon. Now, here's what I find really interesting. Why does nobody talk about Michael Collins?
So he wasn't actually in the lander.
I thought he was.
I believe Michael Collins was still up in the orbiter. but I'm not exactly sure about that.
Okay, well,
it was Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin who went down to the surface of the moon.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess that makes sense. Well, anybody who wants to correct us, send your hate mail to SDPodPhil on Instagram, please.
There's a very high probability that I'm wrong about what I just said, but I think it's right. So right now in my mind,
You know something that I found very interesting that I had no idea was while the Americans were getting ready to step on the moon, Russia had Luna 15 that was orbiting the moon as well. Were you aware of this?
No, I wasn't. Was it a manned spacecraft?
I guess I didn't really look at that if it was manned or not, but basically from my understanding, okay, so America went into orbit around the moon, then they had a separate launcher that they launched onto the moon's surface itself. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So they had the ship that took the 3 Americans to the moon. Then they had a lander that separated, took 2 astronauts down, and then brought them back to the ship. And then the whole thing went back to the Earth.
Okay.
Then they got out into the capsule that went back into re-entry.
Okay, that makes sense then. So, apparently then Apollo 11 was orbiting the moon and Luna 15 was already there when they arrived there and was orbiting the moon. And interestingly, apparently, because of this was the first time during this whole sequence of events during the space race that Russia and the U.S. communicated with each other in like a friendly manner to kind of coordinate each other's orbits around the moon, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you watched, there's a brand new show on Netflix called Space Force.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I have not.
There's one of the characters in a show is played by John Malkovich, and he keeps talking about how scientists have this like camaraderie, like they're like a community of scientists. So I imagine it probably wasn't the military who coordinated the orbits of the 2 ships. It was probably the scientists.
Well,
if I had to guess.
No, absolutely. That's what they make it sound like. Like it's literally NASA's launch command or whatever and Russia's. Like they were communicating with each other, obviously, so there wasn't any accidents in space.
Yeah. And it's it's just a good idea to know, like it'd be bad if there was no communications and you were worried, oh shit, are they going to drop something on us on our landing site?
Well, I mean, as we know now, Russia has never touched foot on the moon, so kind of what they were leaning on is that Russia found out that the Americans were preparing to set foot on the moon, so they launched their own satellite or whatever up there to kind of watch them. Essentially, is what it was. I can
understand that.
So
there's also people who like the Russians actually say we never sent anyone to the moon because it'd be impossible. They would soak up too much radiation and they'd die.
So now you're probably talking about a completely different conspiracy that we will definitely cover at one point, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I didn't know if I was. Honestly, Cody and I we record these episodes without the other person knowing what we're going to record. So I don't know if I'm feeding into what he's saying or going off on some direction. But
you're going somewhere else.
Okay,
but that's a good point. Maybe a little teaser for an episode that might happen like 20 episodes from now, probably. But it doesn't matter. After now, we are literally almost 40 minutes in. We're finally going to get to the conspiracy here. All right. I just thought personally, like, all of the space race stuff is very interesting, and it kind of lays out the timeline for where we can interject with these missing cosmonauts. But basically, where it all starts is, so we have Yuri Gagarin being the first person in space and to orbit Earth. Now, the belief is is that there was several flights that transpired before he went up there that Russia has completely wiped from the surface. Like, they have hidden those, and we're going to find out why they would have maybe hidden them. Now, one of the leading reasons that sparked the conspiracy of Russia covering up the different aspects of their space program is because of the picture that has been purposely doctored to remove a specific man from the picture that I had sent to Phil that was involved with the space program. Now, Phil, it's the first one where it's not the one with Yuri in it. It's the other one where the man apparently just completely disappears.
Yes. Yep. The doctored photo.
Now, allegedly, they didn't have Photoshop in the 60s, right? So apparently, to get rid of that photo, they had to like airbrush all the background on it just to get rid of that guy.
Yeah, so looking at the photo, I have it kind of blown up in my screen. You can definitely see where the man's silhouette is.
Where it's been doctored and everything.
Yes, yep. You can still see, like, roughly see his silhouette in the picture. How it's been brushed up.
Now, the second picture that I sent you is essentially they're pointing out that Russia they have the picture of Yuri, and they remove the general or whatever the hell that guy is, essentially to make it appear like the army is not involved with their space program, so the army wouldn't be covering up the deaths of the cosmonauts.
Yeah, I'm looking at that picture right now, and that's actually a little bit... It's done a little bit better.
Hey, maybe the airbrushers got a little better. You don't know.
Their technology got better. Stalin probably... I think, from what I remember, Stalin probably gave him a lot of practice. When he used to
wait. Stalin was dead at this point, right?
No, but they would have been the same ones who were there when Stalin was...
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying, yeah. Now, back to the conspiracy here. There was two people who kind of brought the belief of these missing astronauts, which come from a very unlikely source, a very weird source, and it is actually two Italian brothers. I don't even know if I can pronounce their names, so forgive me, but I think it's Achille and Giovanni Giudice Cordiglia. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I apologize to Italians.
Superstar Italian people.
If it was like Mario and Luigi or whatever, perfect. But these names are very complicated. But basically, in the 1950s, these two brothers, they started salvaging broken radio equipment or whatever to kind of create their own little thingy. And they set it up in an old bunker, okay? Now, I'm assuming Italy in the 50s probably had a lot of ex-war equipment or salvaged radio equipment or things like that, okay? So that makes sense, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. There's a lot of broken, equipment just laying around. That country really took a beating towards the end of the war.
Oh, absolutely. So essentially, I guess they took all this shit, got it working again, and were listening to whatever. When we moved to about 10 years later in the 1960s, the brothers claimed that they began picking up various Russian transmissions involving their space launches. Now, according to the brothers, in May of 1960, they picked up a transmission of a manned spacecraft that had been launched into space but had somehow gotten off of course and then they couldn't save them, right? So essentially the cosmonaut just had to fucking drift off into space and just, I guess, die of dehydration or whatever. Essentially they picked up this transmission of this poor astronaut fucking having to just sit up there and die. That would be, I don't know, sounds like a horrendous death.
Just the most lonely, terrible feeling that I couldn't even imagine it. It would be like if you were left in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean, and the Navy was just like, well, we're not going to get you, so sorry. You signed up for this, kid.
Do you remember that kind of crazy guy who used to come into the restaurant we used to work in?
Oh, yeah, the pipe smoker.
That's what happened to him.
A literal tobacco pipe.
That's what happened to him.
Yeah.
He got trapped in a sub, but they managed to rescue him, but the oxygen had been cut off, so now he has like brain damage, I think. I don't know, poor guy. I wonder if he's still alive. I don't know. That was so many years ago.
Yeah, that was a solid 2 decades ago.
Oof. But anyway, now the brothers, in November of 1960, they claim to have picked up an SOS call from another Russian spacecraft that seemed to be launched up there, and again, just drift off into space and just fucking have to just die up there, I guess. And it continues. In February of 1961, the brothers claim to have picked up an audio transmission of a Russian cosmonaut suffocating to death after a failed launch. So it's almost like what they made it sound like is he was up there, but something happened while he was up there, and then obviously the vacuum of space essentially just choked him to death or whatever. So that sounds horrible.
They're just losing their best and brightest and then just writing them off completely.
But yeah, it's
horrible. I mean, it's not like, it's not funny losing, like astronauts in outer space, but I don't know if you ever remember that game Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah.
That I play. So whenever you would have like a launch that would go wrong, or you forgot to put a strut somewhere and it would just blow up, it kind of feels like that, where you would just like, oh, well, I guess I'll fix that and restart,
It kind of seems like maybe the Russians felt the same way.
Felt that way. Yeah, like it was just a video game and they were just like, oh, well, that was a lot of money to go to waste on a human being, so let's fix it. Try again next week.
Well, the brothers aren't done here, Phil. In April of 1961, they claim to have picked up a transmission of a successful launch that had managed to orbit Earth 3 times, but because they had no way of getting him back down to Earth, they just left him orbiting up there and just left this person to die. Here's the thing I'm wondering. Well, let me finish this here. Now, this last claim from the brothers came apparently 3 days before the launch of Yuri Gagarin. I don't know if they'd be launching that fast. What do you think? Like they have this guy up there orbiting Earth, and then 3 days later they launch Yuri Gagarin.
If you were Yuri Gagarin and you had just seen one of your fellow cosmonauts shoot up into, beyond Earth's atmosphere, and then you were just told, well, he's just not coming back, and it's your turn, by the way, that would be oofda. That'd be a sickening feeling.
No, this is why this man is my new hero, Phil, because he didn't care. He looked fear in the eye, and he said, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And that's what Yuri Gagarin did, okay? He didn't let fear hold him back.
Yeah. A little bit of vodka-soaked bravery.
Hey, whatever gets you up there, man. Whatever gets you up there, okay? American astronauts have, like, the little Capri Sun-looking pouches to eat and whatever. Yuri, he just had his fucking 6-pack of vodka bottles. That's all he needed. He didn't need anything else.
3 potatoes and a fucking bottle of vodka.
He was probably brewing his own up there.
Yeah. All right, kid, you're up. What? Luckily, he didn't have to drive. He just had to push a button.
All right. All right. Now, the brothers aren't done, though. After Yuri's successful launch into space and everything, according to them, they picked up 5 more separate transmissions of cosmonauts either being lost in deep space or burning up upon re-entry to Earth's atmosphere. Now, this is really interesting, and I'm going to play the audio here for everybody, is they claim that they had recorded audio of the first female cosmonaut. Now, the audio we're going to hear is, they believe her distress signal, but a lot of people think it's doctored. Now, I'm going to read this one other line. Apparently, when they were translating the Russian transmissions, this is apparently what they said. Remember us to the motherland. We are lost. We are lost. Do you think Russian cosmonauts would be yelling that?
As they were dying?
Yeah.
I mean, it is possible. They knew they were being recorded. They might have thought that they were doing it for posterity. Yeah and no. I mean, it's hard to tell because, I mean, you never met these human beings before. You don't know how they acted. And even if you know someone could seem like the brave, most courageous person you've ever met. But if you put them in a situation, they might flake out and get scared. So you have no idea how a human being would act, especially one you've never met before.
That's a very valid point, actually. Well, let's hear this audio of the alleged first female cosmonaut ever, and I want to get your take afterward, Phil.
All right.
Okay, Phil, does that sound like Russian to you? What does that sound like to you?
It's kind of hard. I mean, it sounds like it's someone yelling into a tube, like in a grain silo almost. Can't really. It definitely does sound like a woman's voice. It's really, I mean.
Well, yeah, I think it's very clearly a woman's voice.
Yeah,
but let's just say this is 1960s radio technology from space, so I don't know how good or bad it sounds.
And it's two Italian brothers recording it on God knows what.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna talk about them in just a second, because they might have a reason to, maybe lie about this. So anyway, now a few incidences what leads us to believe that the Russians might have hid what they did earlier is in 1960, a Soviet rocket ignited on the launching pad, killing at least 78 of the ground crew members.
Oh, shit.
Apparently, they didn't talk about that a whole lot initially. In 1961, just before Gagarin's space flight, a Soviet cosmonaut was killed when a devastating fire erupted inside an oxygen-rich training capsule. So, again, I'm just going to say this. Yuri watched this happen. This guy blow up inside of a training capsule, and he still fucking went up there.
Yeah, I wonder if everything would have went right with all of these other Russian cosmonauts, I wonder if Yuri Gagarin would have actually been the first Russian to orbit the Earth. I wonder if he was maybe not exactly their first choice. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the belief is he might not have been the first human to orbit Earth or whatever. He's just the first one to get up there and come back down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
So, the interesting thing about Yuri is he, not that long after this, he ended up actually dying from like in an airplane, a fighter plane or something like that.
Was he, like, Americans used to hire their astronauts out of, like, the test pilots? Is that a situation that he had come from?
I should have looked it up. It kind of made it sound like that, because he died in, like, a plane crash or something. He didn't die with anything involving space at all. He was flying an airplane. I don't know if it crashed or whatever, but that's how he died.
Yeah. That's, I mean, very suspicious when you have this man who is like the hero of the country, and if possibly he didn't come back, you kill him right away, or cover up, claim that no, he died this other way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually have this in my notes, Phil. In 1968, he died in a fighter jet. So 1968, that's when America first landed on the moon. So, yeah, he died that year. So
just 69.
I'm sorry. He died in 68. I apologize. So
so he died the year before.
Yeah, so in a fighter jet, though. So he was clearly involved, I would assume, in a military of some kind.
Could have been helping them make the new MiGs that America ended up fighting in the Vietnam War.
I mean, that could be. I don't know. Maybe they could have offed him too, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have one more incident here. In 1967, another cosmonaut was killed when the parachute on his space capsule failed to open. So now these are just the events that the Soviets didn't talk about initially, but we learned much later on. So very interesting. In 1960... Again, with these fucking science fiction authors. I swear we've talked about science fiction authors and conspiracies before, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, totally. We have, definitely.
So, Robert Heinlein was visiting Russia in 1960, remember, and claimed that he spoke to two Red Army candidates who informed him that they had just recently sent a manned spacecraft into orbit, which was 1 year prior to Yuri Gagarin's launch. Now, the interesting thing is the launch capsule was the Korabl Sputnik 1, okay? Now, it experienced a mechanical failure when the guidance system steered it into a wrong direction. This made the retrieval of the capsule impossible, and the Korabl Sputnik 1 was stranded to orbit around Earth, okay? Now, they claim it's a manned aircraft, but I'm going to tell you a story about this particular line of, I guess, crafts, I guess. What would you call that? Like, okay, what would you call, we had all the Apollo missions, they had all the Korabl Sputnik missions. Is that just like a series of spacecrafts?
Yeah, there's certain like programs like the Mercury, Saturn. It kind of goes along with what rocket they were using, what capsules they were using. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Okay.
So that kind of sounds like trying to think.
Well,
did you say that Yuri Gagarin was actually the one who was in the capsule?
No.
Oh, okay.
What we're saying is this science fiction author was visiting Russia in 1960, which was 1 year prior to Yuri's successful launch that we all know. And he spoke to two members of the army that claimed that they had just witnessed a manned spacecraft being shot into orbit, which is leading to the fact that they witnessed a manned craft being shot into orbit that couldn't come back down, that Russia then covered up. But this guy knew about it right when it was happening, so these guys thought, hey, we just successfully launched someone into space. But later, they're like, oh shit, we just killed that person who is up there, and they covered it up.
Yeah, so their vodka-soaked lips just kind of let that slip. Probably because they thought that it was going to be world news in about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But really, it just all turned to shit, and they probably got silenced after that.
Well,
or they probably never mentioned that they talked about it.
Well, I'm going to tell you this story here real quick, which I think might explain why these two soldiers thought this was a manned aircraft, okay? Now, on March 25th, 1961, in the countryside not far from Perm, an unejector seat from a space capsule had descended to Earth. Residents claimed that it sounded like an anti-aircraft rocket upon its re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. Here's my question. Why did they know what that sounds like? A lot of testing. Was it the residents claimed it sounded like an anti-aircraft rocket coming into Earth's atmosphere? How would they know what that sounds like unless there's extensive amount of military testing?
Yeah, there could have. I mean, that is weird. It's like highly like specific.
I that's what I thought too. Anyway,
that's a good point.
Anyway, so obviously the curious residents went over to examine what just fucking crashed into their countryside, and they saw a lifeless body there, and then they read the tag of who this could be, right? And his name was Ivanich. I think that's what his name was. Ivanich or something like that. Do you know what this name means?
Ivan Ivanovich?
Yes.
I have no idea. I've never heard this man.
Okay, apparently this is what Russians refer to people like we would as John Doe.
Oh, okay.
The nameless person, the unidentified person, whatever. But what they quickly found out that this was a dummy, okay? And this was, the flight was named Korabl Sputnik 5, okay? So essentially what they're saying here is that Russia had launched 5 flights into Earth's atmosphere and attempted to make them come back down correctly, and they were all just dummies. So they were using dummies instead of animals, which is why these 2 red cadets might have actually believed that that was actually a human inside of there.
Like they just weren't in the know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because the dummy, they had pictures of this thing, like, I don't know if they're in a museum now or whatever, but for some reason they made this thing look exactly like a human.
Kind of sounds like, what was that? The, where we talking about the Roswell crash.
Yeah.
How they claimed that the little green men were actually like just these tiny child-sized dummies.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Totally forgot about that.
But they're telling people, oh no, that wasn't an actual human being. This is just a dummy.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, let's take ourselves back to the 60s or whatever. You see something crash into Earth, and it looks like a dead body inside of there, but it's actually a dummy that literally looks like a human being. You'd assume it's probably a dead body, right?
Oh, yeah. I have no idea what I would think it is. Back in the late 50s, early 60s,
I'd probably be shitting your pants, I'd assume.
I'd be shit my... Yeah, thinking it's a fucking witch coming in.
A lot of vodka shits transpired on that day, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, definitely.
But
a lot of potato skins coming out.
But yeah, so that's kind of one belief where these people are getting that they believe it's manned spacecrafts being sent up there, but it was just dummies. Now, the other thing about the Italian brothers, where a lot of people think they were just full of shit, and another reason people lead on this is that the U.S. took them serious and actually shipped them to NASA headquarters to fill them in on what they had found out. Apparently that really happened, so I don't know. What do you think about the Italian brothers?
Yeah, that sounds kind of... I mean, it's a little odd that they would invite them not to debrief them. You would think that they would invite them with the sole purpose of debriefing them, finding out if they're full of shit or not, finding out what they know, what they could corroborate is actually true. It would be weird to have the Americans fly these Italians in and then tell the Italians what we know, almost like we were filling them in. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how put together Italy's government was. In the early 1960s, I don't really know after the war and everything. But to me, it sounded like the U.S. took them strictly to try to get an upper edge on what the Russians were doing. But to me, it's like, how could two Italian brothers somehow get into all these Russian frequencies and the Americans who have much far advanced technology not be able to do the exact same thing?
Perhaps they were just trying to find a better recipe for thin crust pizza.
That could be. They wanted the best marinara pizza that's ever existed.
Yeah, the best, what is that, the margarita?
Yeah, the margarita.
Possible. It's all possible. Gordon Ramsay, of course.
You know damn well he was a cosmonaut. But anyway, so basically, kind of what I'm feeling here is, I don't know if you share the same sentiment, is that, okay, we had the Cold War, we had the space race, we had an extreme distrust for Russia, and when the residents found the dummy through a long game of telephone, somehow that had created the belief that Russia was sending actual humans up there instead of dummies. And because of these two Italian gentlemen who were claiming they had all these secret audio collections from missing cosmonauts, I think it created the belief that there is missing Russian missions. What is your feeling after all of this?
It's kind of like a conspiracy inside of a conspiracy. 'Cause really, the conspiracy that all of these Russian cosmonauts had died came from these two Italian brothers. But then you find out possibly these lost missions were actually dummies that they never told anyone about because they were complete failures.
Yes. I mean, if you think about it, though, the timeline does line up really well with the Korabl Sputnik 5, okay? Sputnik 5 crashed down to Earth, which would essentially signify that they had created a successful flight into space that orbited, then came down, and then probably, I think it was like a month or two later, then Yuri went up there. You know what I mean? So,
well, the one I was kind of thinking about this, and it kind of just popped into my head right now. So that recording that we listened to with the one female cosmonaut, when you're on the radio with like the headquarters or, mission control, there really should be another voice coming in to talk to that person. It shouldn't just be one voice. Also, I don't think they would send a female up into space at that time. Russia was a little bit different during World War II with how they treated females on the battlefield, but I really don't think they included them in their space program. So I'm thinking that might have been like a female, like scientist, engineer, possibly just the person they had on the radio, talking to some, like, either maybe, how do I put this? Possibly she was just on the radio talking to another space agency or mission control about the status of what was actually going on with the capsule. It wasn't an astronaut or a cosmonaut. It was just someone who was on the radio speaking to another room full of scientists and engineers and army and generals, whatnot.
Yeah, that could be. Or I would assuming let's just take their side for a minute. If she's in space and they're down there, could they be tuning into just her frequency? But I think they'd have to be talking on the same frequency, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be. There's also a little bit of lag you would assume.
Yeah.
Between the time you would just have it on one frequency, it like back and forth like that. And she didn't really have like a space for an answer. She was just kind of talking, and then she was just kind of talking again. Like she was giving updates rather than a two-way conversation. Well,
unless it was at the point where they knew that she was basically going to die up there, and they were just ignoring her distress calls.
They were just ghosting her.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I don't. We know Russia, especially during this time, was quite shady. So it's kind of a thing where it's like, they definitely, if they did it, nobody would be surprised. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I found this so fascinating because the Cold War has so many secrets that we don't know, and then the space race has so many conspiracies kind of like surrounding it, and it's just, I don't know. I find space exploration really fascinating, especially around this time. So it was an interesting conspiracy.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting in 50 years when they, like, the history of the space race /Cold War that we're having with China right now. When they, like, when they write the history books on that, and when they find out, like, all of the different, like, spies back and forth, double agents, people trying to, it's all cyber now though too. It's a lot of stealing shit out of like the cloud and stealing it out of secret fucking server farms and shit like that. Or trying to get the upper hand on like infrastructure, trying to destroy each other's internet, that kind of shit.
That's a very good point. Well, we've been running kind of long here, Phil. So why don't you give people the sources to contact us if they would like?
Well, if you want to get a hold of us, you can hit us up on our email, subliminaldpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Subliminal Deception Podcast on IG. Go ahead and give us a follow and send us a message. We love hearing from people. Cody and I both have our own podcasts. Mine is at SDPodPhil. All of my science shit off the cuff that I got wrong, you can go ahead and send your hate mail right to there. Cody, you have a few?
Yeah, follow my personal Instagram at CodyZabub. I love talking to our fans or talking about conspiracies or whatever's going on in the world. Just hit me up on there. Last thing we need you to do, if you are a iTunes listener, please leave the show a 5-star review. Doesn't really matter what you say. Type a little Russian transmission in there. Otherwise, if you're a Spotify user, just hit the follow button and you'll always be updated when we drop a new episode. Alright, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Alright, thanks, guys.